Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our panel on bots, conversational user interfaces, and VR assistants. As you've seen through the talks of the others on the panel, this really boils down in many ways to questions about artificial intelligence and machine learning, big data, and how those develop over the next several years. Um, I'm Jason Griffey, and I'm going to talk about the kind of problem space for AI, some of the things that can go wrong, some of the ethical issues that pop up when using AI. I'm going to talk a little bit about the things you might not expect AI to be doing, and hopefully we'll have some interesting questions come out of this. We are uh, we are used to having sort of ethical questions in our daily lives. We're not necessarily used to having ethical questions about the tools we use. And this is because tools are historically passive objects. We have a tool that does exactly what we want it to do. When we have a hammer, we use it to hammer a nail. We set the hammer down on the table. The hammer doesn't then go off by itself and do other things. That is not the case with the tools that are coming over the next several years, AIs and machine learning interfaces. These are best understood as kind of independent agents in and of themselves that can do things that we don't expect or even, or tell them to do. Um, this becomes problematic in a couple of different ways. The first is that these systems aren't just interfaces, they aren't just sensors. When we build out this fully robust kind of Internet of Things, AI driven world, we're going to have a situation that Bruce Schneier calls the world robot. This is because this world doesn't just have eyes and ears, right? We're kind of getting used to the idea that things around us are listening and watching. That's an output of the Internet of Things. But Bruce points out that not only do they have eyes and ears, they also have hands and feet, and increasingly those hands and feet are multi-thousand-pound pieces of metal that do great deals of harm to biological systems like ourselves. So we need to think very carefully about how much power we give these artificial intelligences, especially when it comes, to ethical questions. The classic kind of philosophy 101 ethical dilemma is the trolley problem, where we have a trolley car barreling down the tracks. It's going to kill a crowd of people, right? Five, six, seven, eight people. If you, the man, the person in the picture, pulls the lever, the trolley switches to another track and only kills one person. The question is that a morally correct thing to do, right? What is the moral, ethical decision there? And if you replace the person with an AI, you kind of can see the sorts of problems that AIs are going to have to solve. And if you extend this, right, this is a very, very simple sort of ethical situation. Um, if you extend this to much more complicated ones, you can begin to see the sorts of issues we're going to have with bias and technological systems that are designed by us ultimately, that have our biases built into them. Technology is not neutral. And our systems are going to do things that we don't expect and don't want, but are there because of our unconscious biases. Like Google, who found that their Photos app sometimes classifies African American or just dark skinned people as gorillas. This is a horrifyingly racist sort of thing to see. It is not anything, obviously, that was intended by designers. This was a thing that happened as a result of data sets that were given to an AI. People should have known that there might be negative outcomes and should have tested for these sorts of things. This is an ethical problem, an ethical outcome that could have been avoided. Similarly, something like Microsoft and their Tay bot, where they had a Twitter bot that was learning to talk, basically learning to talk with people. as a result of what they said to it. It took about a day for this Twitter bot to become a racist, sexist, hate-filled like Nazi bot. It was incredibly fast and a great representation of how our AIs and our interfaces to them can become corrupted by negative inputs. Um, Lots of people are very scared about AI, and not just not just for science fiction Terminator reasons, but things like people like Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, has said things as strong as this: with artificial intelligence, we're summoning the demon. You know those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, "Yeah, I can control this demon." That doesn't always work out. He really does fear that AIs could become I mean, more or less a Terminator situation is out of control, self improving or intelligences that eventually become, realize that that biological systems are not as important. Um, in the short term, however, uh, for us, for information professionals, the big problem with AI is that it's going to put a lot of us out of work. Once it becomes a fully, once we get better and better at these things. Um, Jeffrey Hinton at the University of Toronto, one of the creators of a lot of the neural net technologies that are intrinsic in these systems, says take any old classification system where you have a lot of data and it's going to be solved by deep learning. There's going to be thousands of applications. This is true. If you have enough data about something and an AI that can ingest and crunch through it, the outputs become fairly trivial to get. You get things you might not expect from what we would think of as a machine. Things like inventive recipes. Watson has been fed IBM's Watson AI has been fed thousands and thousands of cookbooks and now produces unique recipes for people to test. We have medical doctors being replaced by AIs in the form of diagnostics, where AIs are far better at diagnosing things like melanomas and carcinomas by visual inspection of photos of skin because they have pattern matching powers that are far better than any individual diagnostician. We have studies that show that AIs are better by by a significant amount than professionals at diagnosing these things. Unless you think that somehow the information professions are immune. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was an announcement about a new company named Ripcord, whose entire job is the ingestion of paper and the output of digital archives, fully scanned, OCR'd, categorized, metadata added, searchable, findable interfaces, and kind of a top to bottom AI digitization archival system for corporations. So this is here. This is a company. They are taking orders right now. More or less anything that involves the manipulation or the interpretation of data is going to be solved and done by AIs in the next 10 to 20 years. And we really need to pay attention to this because it is going to change the way we do our jobs. Um, this is Steve Mnuchin, the current Treasury Secretary of the United States. He said in an interview a couple of weeks ago that he didn't think that AI was anything to worry about with American jobs. He says we're thinking we're very far away, that it's maybe 50 or 100 years from now that we need to think about this. When he said this, effectively the entire technology sphere online went completely nutty and said he's crazy and literally doesn't know what he's talking about because from our perspective, Mark Andreessen was right in 2011 in the Wall Street Journal article where he said that software eats the world. If a if a solution to a problem can be instantiated in software, it is going to be instantiated in software. And moreover, when the software can make itself better at solving these problems, we are going to see it happen at a ridiculous rate of speed. So I think we do have to worry. Thanks. That's my very, very brief section of this. And here's my contact information and everything. I look forward to your questions.